From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the New Orleans Saints Museum at the Saints facility here on Airline Drive, welcome into the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Shough, Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Not forget the Junior. It's very important. Remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And also, hello, the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here, and there's more to come here if you're watching us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. So stay tuned for that. All right, Andre, it is Thursday. We have just witnessed the Saints' final OTA practice. They will transition into minicamp next week. Minicamp is mandatory. OTAs are not. That is the big difference because the practices are going to look very, very similar. What we saw today was certainly interesting. It was another kind of a light workload, if you will. Didn't get quite as much action, but there was a difference in what we saw on the football field today. But first off, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, it's always just good to get back around some football, especially since we only get to come out here like once a week. So the whole week is essentially gearing up for the Thursday that the media is allowed. But we'll be back next week because OTA's in soon and mandatory minicamps coming up.
All right. Well, so this was interesting. We'll get to minicamp a little bit later because it's everyone's got to be here. But the practice today was interesting because it was the first time we saw them do red zone. And it was the same format when you talk about 7-on-7 is the only live period, a lot of individual work, and then the one walkthrough period to close through practice at about 50% speed. And inside the red zone, different things happen because you're not working with the entire field. You're not working, it's more of a condensed space. You got to be a little bit more on time, a little bit more detailed. And I felt like, this is not a surprise, but I felt like the defense actually played pretty well in the red zone drill, honestly, and that makes sense because they don't have the whole field to guard. And even with the, I guess, I don't know how you call it, unlimited time, whatever it is the quarterback has, it's still, it gets it a little more equal in the Saints' favor. So if we're going to talk red zone, we're going to talk about, keep with the theme of Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough in this quarterback competition. I have to give the nod today in red zone efficiency to Spencer Rattler. They both had 8 pass attempts. Spencer Rattler went 6 for 8, threw 3 touchdowns depending on how you scored. The second touchdown was one of those where it was a long play, rolled to his right. It probably would have been blown dead, but still he threw a touchdown. He opened 7-on-7 red zone with a beautiful concept. It was a kind of a seam and a 7 route and a delayed wheel route by Juwan Johnson. Popped wide open, busted coverage. That was a touchdown. Then he opened his second session with a seam throw for a touchdown to Chris Olave. So felt like just down to down, he was a little bit more efficient than Tyler Shough. Shough went 7 for 8, did throw a touchdown to Juwan Johnson. It's important to point out they started. Each had a set of 4, and they both rotated once again. Each guy they went from the 20 to the 12 to the 7 to the 4. So it wasn't like they were methodically moving downfield. They were moving downfield with every throw. I did not think Tyler Shough looked bad, but I felt like Spencer Rattler was just a little bit more efficient. Although both guys in general, I didn't think dominated the drill. I thought it was a good period, but I thought overall it was more of a defense played pretty well because there were a lot of checkdowns, there were a lot of throws to the safety valves out to the wide part of the field where a guy didn't run a route. He was just standing there just in case the original concept didn't work. But in saying that, I do think it's important because Tyler Shough, when he has the open field, is letting it fly. Well, you can't do that when you get inside the 20-yard line. What have I said about Spencer Rattler? I felt like he's been a little bit more efficient between the seams. He threw a seam route touchdown today and threw a wheel route touchdown earlier today as well. So did that show up in red zone? Well, I think it did a little bit because, like I said, Shough wasn't bad, but I felt like he wasn't quite as crisp as Spencer Rattler. Rattler wasn't fantastic, but I thought he was better than Shough. So you just kind of keep the score going. And I would just, based off what they actually did today, I would have to give the nod slightly, maybe a little more slightly, whatever, however you want to grade it, to Spencer Rattler. So it's another part of the process. It's another aspect. It's a very important aspect of what these guys are going to be asked to do at quarterback. What you do in red zone is huge.
Yeah.
And if you are not as efficient in the red zone, could that be a roadblock to getting on the field? And if you are better in the red zone than the other guy, is that better for you when you get on the field? Now, in saying that, you and I talked about this. I'm ready for 11 on 11. I can only watch 7 on 7 for so long. It doesn't feel like we're going to get a full speed 11 on 11 until training camp, which is a bummer. But look, they went through the half speed walkthrough, and it looked like there was some kind of shakiness, but it's hard to really tell from the walkthrough speed. So ultimately, it's been great to watch the 7 on 7. Both guys have had their moments, but that's not football. It's time to get some 11 on 11 full team action, and I guess in late July we'll finally get it.
Yeah, today you just kind of take it how it is, because realistically I wasn't super blown away by either quarterback, but we also didn't really get much. I mean, we got 8 pass attempts from both guys, red zone. Neither guy, really, Spencer Rattler had the best throw today. I do agree with you. He was a little more impressive because for once, this is the first time in the 3 practices we've seen, it seemed like he was a little more willing to take risks than Tyler Shough. And that's something I had credited Shough with, for being the guy to say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and win this job. I'm going to take the 60-yard bombs down the middle of the field or down the sideline. I want to show you guys what I'm capable of and show you guys why I should be your quarterback. Today, it was kind of Rattler, with I think the best throw today was that throw up the seam to Chris Olave. Yeah. Once again, a tight window throw, and that's what he's really excelled with all OTAs, are those tight window throws over the middle. Now, he almost got caught on one towards the end of the period. Another tight window throw over the middle. He was a little bit late, nearly threw an interception to, was it Kool-Aid McKinstry? It was Isaac Yiadom. To Isaac Yiadom, who dropped the interception. So that was his bad throw of the day, but he did a lot of good. He didn't make many mistakes outside of that. As for Tyler Shough, his best throw today, he had a touchdown to the corner to Jawan Johnson. It was actually interesting. Even though they're in the red zone, a lot of the tendencies that we've seen from when they were at the opposite 40-yard line, still the case. Tyler Shough still having his most, effective throws outside the numbers, while Spencer Rattler continues to work inside the numbers and over the middle of the field. But to me, what I'm starting to see now through 3 weeks of OTAs, you're starting to see these quarterbacks separate themselves, not necessarily from each other, but you're really starting to see, like, these 2 guys are 2 different quarterbacks. There's not as many similarities between them as you might think, when it comes to just throwing from the pocket, the poise and decision-making from the pocket. To me, Tyler Shough has excelled at that. But when it comes to creativity outside of the pocket, that's where Spencer Rattler, to me, has shown a little more, because Spencer Rattler is more, he'll be the one that's quicker to roll out of the pocket, even in a 7-on-7 drill when there's no pass rush. And that's, consistent with what we saw when he was able to play last year. They like to roll him out. They like to get him out of the pocket. And when he was in the pocket, he was, a little, at times, scared of the pass rush. So getting to kind of see these guys, Spencer Rattler, he's got a much more, when it comes to velocity, he zips that ball, and that's why he's been so successful in some of these tight window throws, to where Tyler Shough, he's got a little more touch to his passes. So as you watch them, even in a 7-on-7 period, you're starting to see them kind of set themselves apart from each other, see what one guy does well, what another guy does well. But, well, like you said, we really won't know for sure until we get the pads on, we get the helmets on, and we get them playing real football, 11 on 11.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out, because I kind of feel like red zone has only enhanced what we've already seen from both guys. The flick of the wrist, 60-yard downfield bomb is fantastic. Yep. For Tyler Shough. Very few people can do that effortlessly. But it's meaningless when you get inside the 20. Now you have to be a little more clear with what you see. You got to be a little bit more on time. And I felt like in the tight space, that's where Rattler's skill set, which I think he's a little bit further along in that regard, really shows up. So everything is sort of heightened or enhanced with what we've already seen once you get inside the 20, once you get inside the red zone. Because you've got to be on time, you've got to see the field clearly, and you got to it gets even more urgent because of the condensed space. And I think Rattler has done better in the condensed space, in the open field. I think Tyler Shough has done better. I think both guys have actually done fairly well when they've got to break contain, flush the pocket, and make a throw on the run. Shough had a great pass last week, throwing to his left. Shough had a great one. Rattler had a great one today. Breaks contain, rolls to his right. Again, that was the 50-50 ball. I'm not sure if he graded that a touchdown, but nonetheless, a guy in the end zone caught it, so I'm going to give it that regardless of how long it took. So I think that's certainly something to watch, because if you're Rattler, okay, where do I get better? I think Rattler in the 7-on-7 arena is where he's going to be. I think where he needed to grow from last year is not going to take shape until he gets to 11 on 11, because he's got to see the field clearly, and he's got to be able to read blitzes in certain situations. Because there were even a couple times in walkthrough where it certainly felt like there would have been some blitzes, and there could have been a situation where Rattler got lit up, and you don't want that to happen. And in Tyler Shough's case, it's just the incremental growth, because he's a rookie from 7 on 7, 7 on 7, 7 on 7 to now, whenever they get to the training camp, seeing the entire field and what they do. So both guys are splitting quarterback one reps. That's important because, this is very, very, very early in the process, and a rookie second-round pick has got an equal amount of QB1 reps. So I do think that's something to really watch going forward. But this is far from over. If you combine all the pass attempts that you saw that we were able to see in OTAs, and even project that to minicamp next week, it's probably the equivalent of like 1.5 training camp practices. So there's still a lot more data to compile. There's still a lot more things to certainly grade. But I do like how both guys have embraced the opportunity, embraced the competition. You kind of see them talking when they're doing that net drill.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that you don't want two guys that are afraid to step up. And I think both guys have been have been unafraid to step up. I want to point this out as well. We got our first look at Hunter Dekkers today. And he might have had the coolest pass of the day. He was 2 of 4 through a touchdown, but again, it was inside the 5-yard line. He's a lefty, so there was a little curl flat concept where the tight end runs a little curl right over the goal line, and then the running back runs to the flat. So what ends up happening, the tight end's the first read, so there's a 2-on-1, and then he looks to his left, and then one of the flat defender bursts out to the running back, and he's looking at the running back and just throws it
nice
to Michael Jacobson for a touchdown. So kudos to him. It's the first time we got a chance to see him. The lefty out there, you can't miss him. So he got his first opportunity to throw the ball as well. So all in all, it was pretty, how would you describe it? It was an okay practice, but it was one of those, we'll move on to minicamp next week.
Yeah, I felt like I got more out of the first two practices. But like you said, we did see Hunter Dekkers today. And y'all don't want to spend too much time on him because we know this is essentially a two-man race, but it is worth mentioning because we saw the QB3 coming into the season last year, and Spencer Rattler played 7 games. So you kind of have to monitor even the guy who's behind the two that you think are going to be in the mix for the starting job. And Hunter Dekkers, obviously, we only saw him get 4 passes in comparison to the 8 from the other ones. But like you mentioned, that no-look pass, the touchdown, that was smooth.
It was right in front of us.
Yeah, that was smooth. That was nice. It kind of made everybody say, But other than that, I mean, he had a play where he just kind of threw it out of bounds. He didn't necessarily wow you on any other play, but you can tell he's a bit behind the other two, but he's competing. And after what we saw last year with the injuries and everything, there's no guarantee that Hunter Dekkers won't be in a position to get into a game at one point. And really, with Jake Haener being out, Hunter Dekkers really has an opportunity to grab himself a permanent roster spot.
So bottom line for me, as we kind of wrap up the quarterback discussion through OTAs, because this is obviously the last OTA we're going to see. And then we'll have minicamp next week, and we'll obviously reassess then. I think it's pretty much neck and neck right now. I think both guys are pretty equal when you just compile the score of all the things the guys have done over the 3 practices we've been able to see. At least for me, I see pretty equal standing, and I think someone will eventually separate. And I think they will separate when the pads come on, and they will probably separate when preseason is going to matter this year. Preseason is going to matter because what those guys do in the game situation is going to be something to really watch. And I think it's going to make preseason that much more entertaining.
If you did have to pick one, if you did have, obviously we've made it all the way through the OTA practices that we're going to see. We've seen 3 7-on-7 periods, 2 from midfield, 1 from the red zone. If you had to pick one that you feel like exited OTAs with an edge from what we've seen, which one would you pick?
See,
it's hard because they are so close.
They really are neck and neck right now. I can't answer that. I would today really evened it out for me. I was probably leaning more towards Shough heading into practice. Rattler did a little bit better today. Shough did better last week. I thought it was a pretty good even fight week 1. I hate to sit on the fence, but I'm gonna sit on the fence. I'm not there with either one yet, and it just really depends on who ultimately, you talk about separation, who ultimately separates from the competition, because I think the competition is as close as ever, and there's still a long way to go. My instinct right now is to say, if it's close, it's probably going to be Shough, just because that arm talent is something, especially if you imagine if he throws a 60-yard, 65-yard bomb in preseason. Mm-hmm. But if it's proven that they're more efficient and Spencer Rattler operates the offense better and it's abundantly clear, then I think he can win this competition as well. So I think right now they are neck and neck. I mean, you have a favorite right now?
Right now, I'm barely. Is it similar to the poll that we put on the Overtime YouTube page? Right now, it's 52% Shough, 48% Rattler. That's kind of where I am because I think Shough, to me, has wowed me more in these 3 weeks than Rattler has, especially working down the field. Spencer Rattler's been a little more efficient over the middle. We've seen Shough make his best throws on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. But if you had to look at every throw that we've seen so far, the 3 most impressive throws were all from Tyler Shough. The sluggo to Rashid Shaheed, week 1. The throw down the sideline to Donovan Peoples-Jones in week 2. The throw down the sideline to Bub Means for a touchdown in week 3. 3 60-yard bombs all from Tyler Shough. So to me, he's wowed me a little more. He's made the bigger plays. And like we both said before OTAs even started, if this battle is close, if it's if it's a toss-up, if it's 51-49 either way, we both believe that the starting nod was going to go to the guy who this coaching staff drafted in Tyler Shough. So that's where we are right now, and that'll kind of be Spencer Rattler's mission as they head into minicamp, as they head into training camp, is to separate from Tyler Shough.
There's still so much more to go. I mean, there really is. I mean, we've watched basically a glorified version of flag football the last 3 weeks.
And it'll be more of the same because in minicamp, where they've already said in minicamp, it'll be kind of the same routine as they've been doing in OTAs.
Look, this is what they believe in. It is what it is. If it helps when it comes to durability and longevity and health and injuries, then none of this will matter. But just from a purely analytical entertainment standpoint, I'm ready to see a little bit more, and hopefully that comes over the next, well, I guess it won't come next week, but it'll come when training camp gets here. And I'll be very curious to see how the ramp-up period is for that, because they take that 5-week break and then come back in late July. We finally were able to talk to Trevor Penning today.
Yes.
He was really good. We were able to kind of to find him at his locker, asked him a couple questions. I asked him the question, the shift to left guard, what was the conversation like with the coaches? And he said it was pretty brief, pretty simple. Kellen and Nuge brought him in. Brendan Nugent, the Saints offensive line coach, and said, look, we see you as a guard. His response was interesting because you talk about embracing. He is embracing it. He even said, I've always felt like the things I do well were better suited for guard. Yeah. I wonder at what point in his career, because they've tried him at left tackle back-to-back seasons, then right tackle last season. I wonder if at what point in his own career did he feel like, you know what, I'm never going to get the tackle thing right. It's better for me to kick inside. And for the record, I 1,000% agree with him. If you're watching this pod, you probably agree with him. I mean, when you watch him play, the power he plays with, the leverage he plays with, what he does well, and where he can be somewhat vulnerable, not somewhat, but vulnerable on the edge, is lateral quickness. It's a no-brainer. I'm surprised it's taken this long, but it certainly felt like that was one of the first things they discussed as a new coaching staff is we're putting Trevor Penning at left guard. He's a first-round pick. We're not ready to call him a bust yet, so we're going to give him a shot here. We won't know how good Penning is until the pads come on, but I love the mentality. He seems eager. He seems happy. He seems ready to tackle it, no pun intended. So if he's in a good spot, and that's the key to crack the code, then all of a sudden you could have a dominant line of scrimmage for the Saints on the offensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah, and I don't want to be dramatic, but I think it's accurate in this case. This is the turning point in Trevor Penning's career because the Saints didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Trevor Penning didn't work out at left tackle. They felt like he wasn't their best option at right tackle. Now you move him to left guard. If Trevor Penning works and it turns out that his skill set actually is fit to be on the interior of the offensive line, he could have a career resurgence. He could be, a potential Pro Bowler. He could be, an interior anchor to what could be a very talented offensive line for the Saints. But if it doesn't work out, that bust tag that people were attaching to Trevor Penning early on in his career, that's going to stick. And if he doesn't stick with the Saints after this season, other teams are going to be looking at him and they're going to say, man, we saw a team try you out at left tackle. We saw him move you to the right. We saw him even try to move you to the inside where your physicality can really shine, and you really couldn't catch on at any of those positions. So if this doesn't work out for Trevor Penning, you kind of question where his career would go moving forward from here. But if it does work out, the Saints have something special. Penning can make a lot more money, and I think it'll ultimately benefit this team long
That's
term.
a good point, because money's money, and they didn't pick up the fifth-year option. They picked up the fifth-year option for Chris Olave. They did not do it with Trevor Penning. Obviously, they were the 2 first-round picks back in, 2022. So he's got a lot riding on this. And I think right now his preference is irrelevant. It's what the coaches want. And that's one thing, but also for him to not just make the shift, but also embrace it, I think is another thing. And for him to not be delusional and to not be just seeing something that's not there and try to force something that's not there, which clearly felt like they were doing with him at the tackle spots, and just say, you know what, I'm done with that, moving inside. I think is great from a mental standpoint. Look, at the end of the day, he's going to be a starting offensive lineman for the New Orleans Saints. I think this is the 5 they want: left tackle Banks, left guard Penning, center McCoy, right guard Cesar Ruiz, right tackle Taliesin Fuaga. So if this does work, I'm very curious to see the level he reaches to, because I think it's going to be a success, at least in terms of he is going to be a competent starting left guard. Can he be a great dominant left guard? Because then when you draft the first-round pick, you want him to touch, greatness at some point.
Right.
We've been trying to fight off bus labels. So can he not just surpass bus label, get back to even ground, and then take it even higher where he can be a potential game changer at the left guard position? Because if he does, I think the multiplication the multiplier effect of that move impacting the run game, which impacts the passing game, those young quarterbacks and the receivers and the tight ends, and what you could do when you not have to devote an extra guy to his side at right tackle or left tackle. Instead, you're focusing on how great this guy is inside and what I can do in the run game with him. I think the multiplying effect of that could be fantastic for this team, and it could be the hidden factor in maybe this team being a little bit more successful than a lot of us are thinking right now.
Yeah, and it validates what this coaching staff has gone with over the last few years. The strategy of drafting offensive,
front office,
the front office, of drafting offensive linemen as early as they have. Approach that's been criticized, even by me. I feel like the Saints missed out on a lot of good playmakers and deciding to devote so much attention to the trenches and the offensive line and at the times on the defensive line early. But if you take a step back and you're in 2025, 2026, and you're looking on that O-line and you say, look, we have 4 first-round picks on that O-line plus a second-round pick, and they're all ballers. And we have a top 10, top 5 offensive line in the league. You take a step back and you say, okay, front office, it was a long-term plan, but it worked out. So I think, Trevor Penning, what they say about first rounders. It's a position where if you pick somebody in the first round, you want them to be a starter for about a decade to come, So if Trevor Penning can turn into that, good for him. Now, something else I've noticed about OTAs that's been interesting to me, it's been inside. All 3 days have been inside. Now, the first week, I think it had rained previously. So I could get maybe the field was still a little wet. The second week, there was a threat of rain, so they didn't get out there. It's been dry all day today, and it hasn't rained over the last few weeks. So that's kind of an interesting difference I've seen with Kellen Moore. Do you think that he's, trying to keep him inside and out the heat a little more?
They posted video yesterday.
Yeah,
It looked like they were outside. Again, this is the 3rd practice of the week for these guys. So we don't know what they're doing during the week, if they're inside or outside. So it looked like on Wednesday they were outside. Who knows? I mean, look, I could tell you, training camp is going to be hot. Training camp is going to be really, really, really hot. I remember a couple of years ago when we had that drought or whatever, when it didn't rain like it normally does. I mean, they had to split it between outside and inside just because of how hot it was. So
even
I think
for minicamp, they got the stand set up already on airline.
There's something to monitor. I think next week they're going to go outside if they have to, and maybe that's part of the equation. What's very interesting is they have that horn out here, so when lightning is detected, they go inside, but it feels like it's pretty sensitive. So when there's anything even remotely close, that horn goes off. So that's something to really watch.
Especially because the past coaching staff, they've kind of used this time as a way to get the people who are kind of from the north and the ones who aren't from the south and used to this Louisiana heat, because this Louisiana heat, it ain't like everybody else's heat. You got to get out there and get used to it. So Kellen Moore, who's coming from, Philadelphia, maybe he's not prioritizing necessarily getting the guys used to the heat right now because you still got mini camp, you got training camp, you got the stand set out for the fans because they got fan practices next week. I'm sure they'll be outside for that, but it was just interesting to me that all 3 practices that we've been to have been inside instead of outside.
Yeah, and hopefully that changes next week,
Yeah.
at least for their sake. Next week, mandatory attendance. This week is not. A couple guys were back, a couple guys were not. Brzee was back.
Yeah.
Mario Davis, first time we've seen him. He was the first team, obviously, running with Pete Werner at the linebacker spot. We did not have Cesar Ruiz this week. Dylan Reduns was the team's right guard with the first team, so take that for what it's worth. No Cesar Ruiz. It's just like it was a game. Not mandatory. He didn't come today. Yeah. We saw a little bit of Jake Haener do it was like one or two snaps where he kind of did a quarterback draw, so maybe he's getting closer and closer to getting healthy. Won't be healthy enough until, obviously, training camp. And then the other guys that missed, Nathan Shepard was out. Didn't see Cam Jordan out there. Kamara, obviously. Taysom Hill. Was Chase Young out there today? I don't know if I saw Chase Young out there today. I didn't check the rest of the attendance report, but it was about the same. It was good to see DeMario back. It was good to see Brzee back. Saw Alontae Taylor work on the outside. Yeah. Ugo Amadi on the inside at nickel. So a few different things just to, that caught our eye. But all in all, it was a decent practice, but it was a fairly straightforward, nothing overly exciting, despite the fact that they were doing some red zone stuff. I think we're all ready for – we'll get minicamp next week, but I think everyone's ready for real football. And, look, we're just not there yet. The calendar has not turned to July yet, so we will ultimately be close, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see next week how minicamp, if at all, shapes public opinion, because the fans really haven't gotten out to see these guys. So let's say there's 2 open practices, the fans come out, and one quarterback shines over the other, For the fans, if that's all they see, they may start leaning one way. So I think it'll be interesting to see once they get out here. And I think that energy would be good for the team just because, the fans are hungry, just like we are. They're hungry. They want some football. They don't care if it's just 7-on-7 for an hour. They want to see these guys, these 2 young quarterbacks that could potentially be the future of their franchise, get out there and throw some passes.
We'll see next week. We got to get out of here. We're a little over right now.
we are.
Johnson
Oh, my gosh.
Jr., I'm Shough Fazende. Catch you guys next time on Overtime.
Yeah, I completely forgot.
You have 5 seconds left.
In my mind, we were going to 27:50. I was tripping.